Hello everyone, Richard Lewis here with another video, and lots going on in the Counter-Strike scene right now. For me, one of the biggest developments has been this kind of decline that we've started to see from SK Gaming, who were arguably the number one team in the world until recently, had done back-to-back majors, and certainly look to be in a place where you're like, I don't really see how they're going to skip a beat. Who's going to overtake them? Well, turns out that something is going on behind the scenes. They've had some internal issues, and this is now starting to impact on their results on the server, which is crazy to think about, because this is going to give teams the opportunity to jump up and fill that void. Now, let's just quickly talk about contextualize Brazilian Counter-Strike, and a lot of it, people say it all goes back to Fallen. Brazilian Counter-Strike has been, a thing for a long, long time. It kind of died off as we entered, the end of Source and the beginning of CSGO. People who've been following 1.6 for a while know all about MIBR and Kogu and guys like that. It's not like they were never major players. It's not like they hadn't won things, sizable tournaments in the past. Now, what Fallen did was Fallen had kind of kickstarted this resurgence. He was able to get investment, sponsorship money, infrastructure, get a group of players together that could all play. They'd all worked incredibly hard, and eventually led them to the kind of promised land of SK Gaming, a huge brand which had been really, really languishing, and had teams that really weren't fit to wear that mantle, simply because they weren't in a financial position to get them. With the ES Force move coming in and them selling the shares, that all changed. They were able to fund the acquisition of the number one team in the world. And you think, well, this is it now. SK Gaming's going to have this, dynastic approach to Counter-Strike. But hasn't happened, and in fact, it's inarguably got worse. They've regressed of late. So you might be wondering why that could be. Well, the question for me with this team was always going to be, how would they overcome the first genuine bump in the road, the first irreparable argument? Now, by irreparable, I mean something where the differences are so profound, two players no longer believe that they can play with each other. So with Cold Zero and Fallen have had arguments multiple times. When Cold Zero first came into the team, Fallen said, this is the guy we need to make this team great. I've got absolute faith and confidence in him. And people were just like, who the fuck is Cold Zero? Is he really going to be that good? Well, turned out, I think we can all agree he's at his peak, and this is all up for debate now. I think some people might give this mantle to Simple. I might be inclined to do it. I don't know. But certainly, there was a period where Cold Zero was hands down the number one player in the world, playing for the number one team in the world. So when they had arguments, or Fallen Cold Zero had arguments, and this could be little in-game bickering differences in playstyle, they would argue, they'd talk it out, they'd hug it out, and it would just go back to normal. And this was very well documented. People inside the Brazilian scene knew this. People who went to big events knew this, that there was some heat there. Cold Zero is a young guy, and he's got that, what they tell me is the classic Latin temperament. I don't know if that necessarily excuses it in a broader context, but he's a hot-headed guy. We've seen that from his Twitter feed. This is somebody who, called out, Team Liquid Hiko, I think called him a fat fuck at some point. Been super, aggressive towards anyone who he thinks is getting like an unfair advantage. We all remember that he tweeted a very unsavory insult to a fan who told him that he'd, was cheating or played a situation badly. I can't remember which. But he snapped at him and ended up having to delete his Twitter for a little while, and actually got away with it purely and simply based on his popularity. I think had that been a European player that didn't have the same level of popularity, I think he's still apologizing and atoning for it now. Might even have got banned from a tournament or two as people rush to virtue signal and hold people accountable when they're at their worst, not at their best. But anyway, the bottom line is somehow Fallen and Cold Zero have always made that relationship work. But they're in a point now where him, Fallen, and FNX, it's obviously not working out, and they're obviously at an impasse, and they can't get past it. I was linked to a YouTube video recently when they won a game of like everyone was bro fisting and Fallen and FNX were kind of really like this close. It was like being on the tube in London. They were this close to each other, but they weren't making eye contact or anything. And I don't put too much stock in that. You know, some people, gave the rebuttal. Oh no, they bro fisted just before that. You can see, and blah blah blah, whatever. There's a problem there, and clearly it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better. And how can you say that, Richard? Well, we'll come to that in a second. Now, the whole idea about this Brazilian scene is that with Fallen in the middle of it, all roads kind of lead back to him. But actually, these guys are all really together. That they're a fraternity. They take it very seriously. You know, Fallen was doing so much for the team that's now, you know, gone on to be Immortals. But that, you know, those guys, at some points, it was even being alleged that, you know, it was unfair. You know, he would stand behind them during their games. And when they won, people were like, oh, well, fuck Tempo Storm, which is the organization they used to be. Fuck them. They're using Fallen's tactics. That shouldn't be allowed. There was a lot of people getting very upset and bitter, you know, just at how much time they were all spending together. It looked very incestuous. But, you know, to Fallen, he sees it as like, I want to make Brazilian Counter-Strike great. I want to have as many Brazilian representatives as possible. That was certainly the story. That was how it was all peddled to the general public. But this is where it gets interesting, because FNX, it looks like he's no longer welcome in SK Gaming, or wasn't. And now they might have to do that situation where it's like they've actively tried to replace a player, but they're in that humiliating climb down now. They're in that humiliating climb down where literally they have got to pretend, none of that wanted to happen. We that was a knee-jerk thing. And I'm going to show you how I know this. So we all remember Yi Lamau. I've talked about how this guy, you know, he's come across, you know, hacked Skype dumps and this kind of thing before. People might remember there was a hacked Skype dump of Fallen, which I got sent. I've seen it. Nobody really made a big deal about it. Nobody really published anything. Nobody found anything incriminating or shocking in there, obviously, or it would have been out there. It would have been in the public domain. But now it seems that the manager from SK Gaming has been hacked. And there was a screenshot put out by this guy, Yi Lamau, who we all know in CS is this guy that comes across all these hacked Skypes. And if you look at it, it's dead. The person who, you know, has been managing SK Gaming, and it's a conversation between another party that we don't know who it is, where he's saying, you know, I want to switch FNX to Phelps, and this hasn't been denied. This hasn't been rebutted. The only response from Dead, I believe, was to just block Yi Lamau. It looks legit to me, and this shows that they were seriously considering. He even says, if we can't replace him with Phelps, then we'll get a European in. So this really implies to me that FNX's days are numbered within SK Gaming, which is a bit crazy, because I was looking at his statistics, and I think he's been in pretty decent form. I think, you know, he's only really underperformed in the games where everyone else is underperforming, if you know what I mean. He's had some pretty impressive clutch rounds, but, you know, SK Gaming have been laboring against teams that they would ordinarily, you know, put to bed. They've given up maps, you know, to like Optic and TSM and teams like this. And it's very, very strange to see them performing this badly. And I don't necessarily think FNX has been part of that problem. I've been watching him. I think he's, you know, a very solid all-round player, lots of experience, and I don't know. I feel that now when you break up this 5, I don't know how they're ever going to get back there. Now, here's what I will say: Phelps is fucking amazing. Like, Phelps is an absolute beast, and Phelps is, you know, certainly the next person in line to be on a team like SK Gaming, to follow in coldzera's footsteps. This guy's consistent. He's got incredible aim, incredible understanding of the game. He's really got it all, and he's going to be a big, big star moving forward. But here's the next problem. With all of these ties between SK Gaming and between Immortals, how do we how's this going to affect the overall relationship, the fabric of this great Brazilian fraternity? Keep in mind, the former SK Gaming coach is now the in-game leader of Immortals. How's he going to feel about what looks to be like here from this Skype log? They're even saying, and I read the full log. I don't think it's actually on this, but there's a paste bin out there, and it was basically saying that they don't really. We're not sure if Immortals know about this yet, but this is our plan. So they haven't even made a formal approach. Now, how's that going to affect everyone's relationship? You want to take our best player? You assume that we're just going to give up our best player to take one of your players who doesn't fit in anymore or something like that. How's that going to work? Is that going to make everybody more upset and angry with each other? And of course, now that it's out there and it's undeniable, starts to explain a little bit, doesn't it, about like Immortal's own kind of drop off. Imagine being Phelps and thinking, holy shit, I could be playing for SK Gaming, and imagine the rest of the team having that uncertainty and going, well, Phelps is going to leave us, brilliant. That lack of confidence is going to be infectious, and it is going to create issues, especially among players that, by their own admission, are emotional. So very, very strange. Now, also, if for people who are going, oh, it's a Skype log, it's probably all been dealt with, it's all been taken out of context, this could be really old. Well, if you go to the 19th of this month, which is just 7 days ago, it's an interview with Fallen, and this is on HLTV. And if you see here, the question is, you took a 3-month break from LANs, and now you're making mistakes in these games where you rarely make. You've thrown away so many advantageous positions. So how do you feel about the team's performance now? And Fallen even says it's not about the break. We didn't take it. I think it's not a break problem. We're having internal problems, mainly some relationship problems that should not be happening. And this kind of breaks the team spirit. When you lose the team spirit, then you can't proceed. Right now, we're trying to fix it. We're trying to get our motivation back. I mean, this is totally our fault. This should not be happening. But sometimes it's really difficult when you're living together. You have to spend all day with each other. Sometimes it's just too much, There's also the fact that when you reach the top, it's a whole other game to stay there. We weren't mature enough to understand our mistakes. Just because you're the best in the world, it doesn't mean that you don't need to perform better. That's the kind of mentality that we had, but hopefully we'll be able to fix it in the next few games. So basically, the last few sentences are the typical PR bump. But he is admitting we've got internal problems, we've got relationship problems, they shouldn't be happening, and it has broken the team spirit. Now, with FNX being the guy that's going to have to go out, going to have to make way, you can say FNX is the cause. That's what the rest of the team is determined. And that is an issue, right? I mean, it might not be true. We have no idea. But what I can say is I can tell you a story from way, way back, just to give you an idea about FNX. And, this is a long, long time ago. So, yeah, he's super young. It's a 1.6 story. But I wanted to just work this in just to give people a bit of history. There was a time, I think it was at the E-Stars tournament in Korea, where literally they went to this tournament and he didn't want to go. And he'd already missed a flight and they rebooked it for him. And he just didn't get on the plane because he didn't want to play in this tournament. He didn't want to go to South Korea. He couldn't be asked. And he just didn't turn up. So all his teammates get out there. Where's FNX? Yeah. He's not coming. He can't be asked, can he? So they had to beg. I think it was BSL, if you guys remember him. I think they had to beg him, he'd not been playing for ages, to act as a stand-in because he was there doing some commentary or as a journalist or something. So when FNX does get hot-headed, it can be pretty fucking extreme. I can't think of many examples in my whole history of Counter-Strike where honestly a player has literally just said, I'm not going to this tournament. You guys, if fuck it, and then kind of made it look like he's going to go and then not go. So, and obviously, like I said, it's about 10 fucking years ago. People mature, but still, I think that temperament can be an issue. And FNX could be doing some stuff in the team right now that is putting people's nose out of joint. But I got to say, if you can work through it with Cold Zero, I don't understand why you can't work through it with FNX. I think maybe because FNX is a little bit older, he's 26, he might be a bit more set in his ways, but maybe he doesn't want to necessarily always have to acquiesce to the in-game leader. But it's Fallen's team. It's always going to be Fallen's team. And it's always going to be Fallen's ideology that gets carried on. Maybe FNX is having issues with that. Again, I don't know. I can only go on little snippets that I'm hearing. But certainly, it seems to me that long term they're going to have to replace FNX. Now, what's the alternative? Maybe you don't replace FNX, right? Now let's weigh up that fucking decision. Maybe you don't replace FNX. Well, that's going to be absolutely awful for the team, because FNX knows now, and certainly it's out in the public domain, that they were actively trying to replace him. How do you come back to a team like that? Why wouldn't you necessarily look to get a better deal for yourself and look to leave? Why would you sit around and wait, knowing that, for example, that you're under contract and they could replace you, and you could be sat around holding your dick, not able to get in the team because the organization won't let anyone buy you out, and you're a streamer? Why wouldn't, how's that going to fucking improve your mindset and make you look around at the teammates around you and think, yeah, I want to play for these guys? And secondly, how's it going to, the people who remain, like maybe who weren't as active in wanting FNX out, that maybe didn't have a say, they've kind of got to go cap in hand and be like, well, we didn't know necessarily. So it creates all these levels of uncertainty and tension. And of course, Phelps over at Immortals, that he's got a whole new issue of his own. Going, bloody hell, I could be playing with those guys. I could replace FNX. I could be playing with Cold Zero and Fallen, and this team's pretty good, but fucking hell, that's SK Gaming. I could be making lots of money. I could be winning majors. I might want to go there. So he's going to be like, fucking, come on, guys, I got this opportunity. All of this is really starting to unstitch the tightly woven fabric of Brazilian CS, and it just goes to show that when you do have these really close scenes, these close-knit scenes, all it takes is one potential transfer between two teams to really cause seismic waves. This reminds me a lot of Denmark, actually. The Danish scene's very much like that. All mates when you go to LANs, all mates when you're in a team, but there's a reason they don't stay together, and famously haven't until like Astralis came along. There will always be there'll always be shifts in power. They'll always be looking to get a better person in, a better personality fit. That's always been one of the things that happen in Denmark. And of course, quite emotional people in a different way themselves. Not like the cool Swedes, don't give much away. Danes aren't like that. And all it takes is like one falling out and an entire team can go its separate ways and be cast to the winds. So this is really, really big. And this is why, for me, I don't have SK Gaming winning any of the big tournaments as they're coming around right now, because the one thing they always had was they were galvanized. The one thing they always had was that when they went into unfavorable situations, they could take a timeout, huddle around, give an inspirational speech, talk to each other, fire each other up. Well, that's clearly not the case anymore, is it? I mean, this is a team that, if anything, a huddle now would be incredibly awkward, because the two senior players in the fucking lineup fucking hate each other, and you're actively trying to replace somebody. So I think SK Gaming need to fix this. Now, if they get Phelps, they can rebuild, but the problem with that is, if you get Phelps, I think that really fucks Immortals over, and then Immortals have got a problem. Even if Immortals get FNX, I don't think that necessarily fixed the problem, because if you were to give me a choice between FNX, and I highly rate FNX, if you were to give me a choice between FNX and Phelps, there's no competition at all. I would take Phelps in a heartbeat, and Immortals would be weaker for the move overall, unless they could do something that would, solve all the issues. And who knows, maybe FNX goes there and encounters similar issues when running up against Zeus, because Zeus has gone there with proviso that he's going to have, young players that he can mold that will fit into his system. He's talked non-stop about the system, how it's all about the system. So this is a fucking crazy time for Brazilian Counter-Strike. I think both teams, both Immortals and SK Gaming, are going to have a dip in form. We're going to have, it's really funny, it's coming at a crazy time, because they're going to have an opportunity to win a tournament, because ESL Brazil's here. The end of the Pro League's going to be there, and Brazilian teams are going to be playing on Brazilian home soil. I don't think they're going to be able to put on the performance that the home fans want, because I think they've got all these internal issues that are going to actually tear the team down from the inside. Anyway, hope that's a little bit of insight into what's been going on, and I'll see you on the next video.